Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a person who answers questions here on YouTube. So sometimes there's a fine line between protecting people from abuses by police and giving police the necessary tools to protect us from bad people. In this situation, we're going to talk about something that has been long regarded as lawful, which is called a Terry stop. More on that in just a moment. The Terry stop enjoys an interesting part of our legal history because it essentially said it's not unreasonable for a police officer to stop someone and frisk them. Now, here's the bad thing about good Supreme Court law. It can be misinterpreted and misused and abused much the same way other things can be overused and misused. And that seems to be the case with the Terry stop. It has been used to justify a lot of what I would consider to be unreasonable searches and seizures. But let's talk a little bit about how the Terry stop came to be. What happened there was a Cleveland detective saw these two men walking up and down in front of the same store 24 times. I think I might have reacted a little bit earlier than waiting for him to do that 24 times, but whatever. At any rate, they walked over to a third man and they were talking when the detective walked up, identified himself, pushed one of the people up against the wall and frisked him and found a pistol. He then frisked the next person and found a pistol. Having found those two pistols, he arrested all three, and the two were charged with unlawfully carrying a concealed weapon. So when this went to trial, the first thing that happened was the defense attorney, doing his job, filed a motion to suppress as an unreasonable search and seizure. And the trial court actually was responsible more than anything else for writing the Supreme Court opinion here. And the reason is because the trial court first announced this idea of an investigatory stop. In other words, this was not an arrest, it was not a seizure secondary to probable cause. It was a stop, an investigatory stop, based on reasonable suspicion. And eventually, that's where the Supreme Court came down on the Terry stop. So here's what the Supreme Court said about the necessity of doing these stops and why it created the Terry stop exception. First of all, it said that the Fourth Amendment protects people, not places. And although it says you should be secure in your papers and stuff at home, it protects people, not the individual places. It also said that whenever the police restrain a person's freedom, a seizure has occurred. The next thing it said was that a careful exploration of the outer surfaces of a person's clothing was a search under the Fourth Amendment. So, looks like we're going down the right path here, correct? I mean, after all, they're determining that it's a seizure and that it's a search. Now the only question is whether it's reasonable or unreasonable. And the court said that where it's warranted by the circumstances, the individual circumstances that the officer observes, and where he can articulate a reasonable suspicion, it is okay to do a frisk for the officer's safety. Very much like Pennsylvania versus Mims, which is based on officer safety, the Terry stop is based on officer safety. We want to make sure that officers go home at the end of the day. So the officer can conduct the search even where he can't detail enough information to make a probable cause arrest, even where no crime has been committed, even if he only suspects that a crime is in the offing. He can do one of these investigatory stops, and that's what happened here. And then the Supreme Court said, look, whenever possible, get a warrant. But getting a warrant isn't a possible or a practical solution when what you're trying to do is take action immediately to stop a crime or prevent a crime from occurring. So that is what the Terry stop, or how the Terry stop originated. It originated out of officer safety, which again is probably a good rationale. We definitely want to protect police officers. But like anything, it can be abused, and it often is abused, and sometimes courts let people get by with that. Sometimes they let the police officers get by with abusing a Terry stop on some thin assertion that there was reasonable suspicion. Well, what constitutes reasonable suspicion? Well, things like a bulge in your clothing, things like walking up and down in front of a business 24 times, that certainly is a little bit unusual. The hour of the day. If you're walking down a city street at 3 o'clock in the morning with your hands in your pocket and your head tipped down, it's certainly reasonable for a police officer to approach you and ask you what you're doing. And depending on your response, he may or may not have reasonable suspicion to conduct a further search. But basically, there has to be something that the officer can point to develop a suspicion. And it can't simply be that you're wearing a yellow shirt, or you're wearing Nike running shoes, or that you have a particular t-shirt or a particular set of shorts on. There are lots of different ways that police officers use to justify Terry stops. Most of them are reasonable and rational. Some of them aren't. When they aren't, the place to fight about that is not at the side of the road. It's not out on the street. The place to fight about it is in the courtroom. That's why you have lawyers. That's why lawyers file motions to suppress. And that's why motions to suppress evidence are granted every day. So I hope you found this interesting or helpful. If you have, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it when people leave comments. The reason I appreciate it is because it helps feed the YouTube algorithm. And also, when you like my channel and subscribe to my channel, it makes it easier for me to produce these videos. And perhaps most of all, it ensures that you'll see the next one, which will be probably better than this one. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you've had a good time and learned a little something about the Terry stop, and that you have a terrific day as a result.